of President Trump has certainly been shaking things up in Canada with talking about Canada as the 51st state and memes with the American flag going over Canada. Being part of the independence movement in Alberta, of course, for a long time, admittedly as gray as I am, the 51st state concept has been one around for a long time, whether for Alberta or for the country as a whole. So my guest, Brian Loving, of course, he's been pushing this concept for quite some time, and it's a ripe time to talk about it a little more at length. So thank you very much for joining me, Brian.
Hey, hi, Cory. My pleasure. Nice to see you.
Yeah. So we've seen this discussion really kind of ramp up a little bit on the way in. I kind of wonder though. We saw more people starting to chew on the concept now that, President Trump threw it out there and made them start to think about it. People say, there's a lot of advantages we can see with it. But part of my view is what happened lately with just kind of the tariffs and other stuff is it might have set it back a little bit. I mean, people might be open to the concept, but people don't like a forced marriage. They kind of want to join in willingly. Where do you think things are sitting right now that there's been kind of some tensions opened up?
It's hard to say in terms of percentages. I mean, many Canadians, certainly that I've spoken to, are not in favor of it. Many Americans that I've spoken to are in favor of it. And I'm a dual citizen, so I'm kind of between both places. And it's kind of interesting to hear all of the comments from the people. And my view is that there's advantages and there's disadvantages to everything. And one big advantage is if Canada belonged to the U.S., immediately you're covered by their constitution, and you have freedom of speech, you have the right to defend your life, and you have all kinds of things, Cory, that you don't have in Canada. Canada doesn't have a constitution. Many people think that it does. I mean, it doesn't. It has a document that's full of notwithstanding, and you can do this if we agree, and all of that. And I mean, so the Constitution would be a big win. Is that enough reason to join a country? I don't know. I mean, again, there's so many things on both sides. But Trump certainly has, he's coming at this stronger than I would have ever guessed. And I don't know where a lot of this stuff has even come from. Canada screws us over in $200 billion a year. And I haven't heard any of the Canadian politicians saying that that's an incorrect number. So maybe it's accurate. I don't know that. But it's a big number. And if it's true, I mean, that's something to take into account from his side for sure. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, what do your people think, Cory? The people that watch you and write in, and I think you get lots of comments. Well, what's the overall thing? And I think, like in Alberta, what does Alberta think?
I mean, as I said, I think people initially went prior to the inauguration when President Trump was sort of stirring up a lot of folks, and kind of proposing it a little bit. A lot of Albertans were starting to kind of chew it over and think, well, the Second Amendment and some property rights wouldn't be so bad, and I'm looking at the tax numbers, the real estate numbers, the trade we already do. But as I said, then when he sort of came on like a freight train with the tariffs, that's when people suddenly kind of, I think, dug their heels in a little bit. Hold your horses now. We were thinking about it, but now you're kind of poking a stick in her eye, and they get a little more tepid on it. So I think it kind of made a step forward and then a step back.
I think it needs a little more time. I mean, think of it as you're in a very, very unhappy and abusive relationship, but you're a Christian guy and you don't want to get divorced, and you just take it every day. And she hits you with a 2x6 every day. On the odd day when she hits you with a 2x4, you say thanks, and you think things are getting better. And then all of a sudden one day you're out and a girl just makes this big push on you and come with me, and it throws you. It would throw you. I'm making this up as I go, and so that would throw you. You would stand back and be frightened and go home and try to make up with your wife again. And I kind of think this is similar to that. I mean, once you get over the shock of it and you start to think, maybe it's time to move out. Maybe I'm being abused where I live. I mean, maybe I'm not allowed to go out. I'm not allowed. She takes money out of my purse, and my wallet rather, and maybe it's time to move on. And I think when you look at all of, I'm not suggesting Canada should move, but either you repair your relationship or you move. You have to do something. I mean, to live like you live is not nice. I mean, I'm taxed to death. I have no freedom. I have no rights. I mean, there's a lot of things that aren't very nice. And another thing, I'm on this rampage here, Cory. That's okay. But if it really is $200 billion a year, that's like me owing you $10,000. And when we're having a beer, I brag to you how I'm flying first class to Honolulu for the weekend. I mean, that's not nice. You know, I should pay you. And I'm sure you would bring that up. And you know, so Canada has got to kind of pay attention here. Either we have to get happy at home, or we should look for a new spouse.
Well, that 200 billion a year figure, I mean, that's kind of what got under my skin a little bit, because it's kind of a mischaracterization of our relationship. That's a trade deficit, not a subsidy. And President Trump keeps calling it a subsidy. I mean,
I know.
As one of our other reporters we worked with mentioned on a show I did recently, is, you know, if I go to Safeway and I spend more than Safeway buys off me, it doesn't mean I'm subsidizing Safeway. I'm just a bigger customer than they are from me.
It's confusing the way it's delivered, and so it's hard to understand. I mean, but another thing from the American perspective, I mean, you have to look at, do you want Canada? I mean, 70% or close to 70% of all Canadians have never voted Conservative, ever. And so you really want them to join your country? I mean, if you did an allocation kind of based on the California and other state formulas, you'd have like 50 some odd seats in Canada. And I don't think the Republicans would ever get elected again. So you got to kind of be careful who you're leaving your wife for. I mean, you might end up with somebody that you don't like. And in this case, what I'm saying is it would be the opposite of that.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because from a Republican point of view, this would not be good for the Electoral College. I mean, and we talk about the 51st state. Realistically, with the size of Canada and even the population, it would be, if in this theoretical world we merged, it would be more like there'd be 5 or 6 states perhaps, and at best only one of them would be a red one.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, I'm an Albertan and born and raised and so on, and I mean, I'm a separatist. I've always thought Alberta should be its own country, and I think Alberta should be the 51st state or its own country, one or the other. I mean, I think you start expanding into all of Canada, I think that's problematic for both countries, and certainly for the U.S. I mean, the last state to be admitted into the Union was Hawaii. I'm not sure when. I think it was in the late 50s, maybe 1959 or something. And even Arizona didn't come in as a state until 1910 or something. And of course, there was Alaska. And I'm so old, Cory, I remember Alaska and I remember Hawaii coming in as states. And, you know, is it time for another one? Again, there's a lot of moving pieces here. And why Trump is so aggressive on this is interesting. And like he says, you know, he has said several times, I love Canadians, but I don't like their leadership. Well, you know, I got news for you. We don't like it either.
Well, yeah, but and again, though, I think that it almost has had at least from our perspective, a detrimental effect. It's more like, yeah, I can't stand them either, but it's not your place to tell me that you got a problem with it. It's up to us to get off our butts and kick that clown out of Ottawa.
I agree with you. I agree. But a lot of our people aren't getting off their butts to do it. And so that's an issue too.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the U.S. You know, as I said, I'm still sporting a little bit of a tan from my Arizona time. I wish I could have spent a bit more down there. We do some business down there. I worked down there a lot on an L1 visa in years gone by in the oil field. And what I want to see, though, is a tightening of our relationship. I want to see, you know, at least from my perspective, freer trade. Let's develop that relationship. Let's get, you know, tighter together. And then actually, I think we would get closer to that potential Alberta 51st state. But unfortunately, what we see right now is some bigger walls going up.
There are some walls going up, and people are working hard at adding more bricks to it. I mean, look at the NDP leader. He says, you know, the federal leader, he has made a statement about how dare you, you know, we'd never give up our health care. Well, for heaven's sakes, your health care? You mean that broken thing where you're 80 years old, your best before date is up, you get to be put on a 2-year waiting list for a new part? I mean, what health care is that? But that's how he's talking. It's more rhetoric and people buy into it, right, to the narrative, and it kind of gets bigger and bigger. I agree with you. There's a better way to do it for sure. But how do you do that? I mean, particularly with two countries that are so, they're just not even close to being aligned with regards to their politics. Trudeau is, you know, all the pinkos, like they're pink. And it's hard.
It is. And you know, one of the things I don't like seeing on both sides is people, you know, using national anthems at sporting events to boo each other's anthems. It just brings it to a personal one-on-one level, and people take it personally. Nobody in the USA likes to hear their anthem booed. Nobody in Canada likes to hear that either, even if you're uncomfortable with the leadership and you're ticked off. And it drives that personal wedge between people, which I just hate seeing, because again, the Americans is still our closest ally and friends. I mean, culturally, we're still very tight with each other. You don't see a huge difference when you travel south of the border. There's differences, but they're not huge. It's not like when you travel to Europe or Asia or even South America. And to start, getting personal with each, I just don't like seeing our relationship disrupted like that.
I agree with you 100%. It's not very nice. And the relationship should be better and stronger. But again, it's all political. A lot of it is political. And the people, I think, are okay. They kind of like each other. And the Canadians add a lot to the economy of, I live in the Coachella Valley in California, and I don't know the percentage, but I'd venture a 30% guess of all the people there are Canadians in the off season in Canada, and it's nicer there right now than it is in Calgary.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, Canadians are a little brainwashed because we all watch American television, and we think we have rights, and we think we have freedom, and we think if somebody breaks into our house that we can hit them on the head with a bat and protect our home, and it's not the same. So there's a lot of that that kind of mixes into the argument, and then you get the tariffs that go into it as well, which is a separate issue, but that comes into it, and so everyone now is fighting. And not fighting, but they're arguing. And as you've already pointed out, I mean, there's a nicer way to do this.
Yeah, well, President Trump has come in kind of stirring the anthill, and then he's going to see what he can put together afterwards. He's doing that all over the world right now. He seems to have turned his eyes away from us for what'll probably be a few weeks anyways, and maybe we'll get some stuff in order. Something people asked me when I came back from Arizona, was what were you hearing from Americans you were talking to down there? And to be honest, at that time, anyways, I mean, the news on the potential tariffs was huge in Canada because I was still watching Canadian news. And most Americans, I mean, there was big news with Trump and what he's going to do, but the tariff thing wasn't really on their radar or concerns about Canada. Has that changed now, though, now that it kind of came to a head since the inauguration?
I think Canada's in the news more, up until recently on Fox News and Newsmax and even CNN, there wasn't a lot of Canadian content, and there is now. You go to even BBC and other networks, mainstream networks, and there's a lot of Canadian content, and so it is talked about, and Americans now are paying more attention, and Canadians used to go to, even me, I remember going to the States asking cab drivers about different things in Canada. They don't have a clue, and now they do more. So Canada's more kind of out there, and I think tariffs are part of it. The 51st state thing is the biggest thing, though, in terms of conversation. And Trudeau's a big topic. People are asked about him. They know my Canadian background, and I'm asked a lot about him and his politics and so on. So.
Yeah, well, Trudeau's not exactly a point of pride for a lot of Canadians, but particularly Albertans, especially when we go down there. I got to kind of mumble, yeah, that guy. We're working on it. Give us some time here. We'll try. Unfortunately, this whole thing seems to have actually garnered him a little bump in support. I mean, he's on the way out the door, but he might be replaced by Carney, and that's even more frightening than Justin, because I mean, Trudeau is an ideologue, but he's a moron. Carney's an ideologue, but he's smart, and we could be in a heck of a lot more trouble, even though Carney might not be in for very long.
Oh, well said. And to see Trudeau kind of getting some glory now, and he says, we're going to fight and all this stuff. I mean, that's a girly man talking like a man, and it's coming across like BBC kind of brings him out as the man who's going to lead Canadians out of the wilderness, and he ain't the guy. I mean, the whole Canadian system is so messed up. I mean, you're going to have probably 3 prime ministers here, hopefully 3, not 2. You're going to have Trudeau, you're going to have his replacement, and you're going to have the Conservative leader, and all within a short time period. And you shouldn't have 3 people negotiating with one government.
No, we've got a president with a brand new 4-year mandate in front of him. What we really desperately need is a prime minister with a 4-year mandate in front of them. That's the only way you can cut a real deal. And
100%.
There's nobody to negotiate at this point. I mean, I would, to try and be balanced, say it doesn't matter which party the person is. They'd have to have a mandate, though. But of course, I would much prefer that person be Pierre Poilievre, who has a much better head on his shoulders with this. But
I mean, I look at the liberal leaders and the Republican leaders in the U.S. look at them as well, and they look at them with distaste. And you know, one friend of mine is a Republican senator, and he said that Trudeau, he says if he had a rope in his hand, he wouldn't know if he found a rope or lost a horse. And I laughed. I said, yes, that's bingo. And so it's a problem, but because he's viewed as being a weak person, and Trump, they shouldn't ridicule him as much because they are also ridiculing the position, but it is what it is.
Well, we just got to keep doing what we can. Politics is an ongoing game. There's never, a finish line or a win. You just keep playing and hope that you're doing better than one year than the last. So before I let you go, where can people find you or what your commentary is on it? I guess it's going to be interesting to watch this as it unfolds over this. We're in for a very interesting year, if nothing else.
Oh, well, we are. Trump keeps it interesting. I mean, every morning you wake up, you have to rush to the internet to see who he's calling names or what country he wants to take over. He's kind of acting like Napoleon. I mean, I don't know where all this came from. We have Panama and the Gaza Strip and the blah, 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 and Greenland. There's a lot of countries this guy wants to have, and it's just interesting. I mean, he thinks he's back doing the Louisiana Purchase or something, but, every day it's interesting with him. And we'll see where it goes. He's only got a couple of years, Cory, to do this before the other round of elections. So, he has to go fast. And is he ever going fast? Here's a guy that drinks a dozen bottles of Diet Coke a day. And I don't know how he has time to do that with all of the new rules that he's putting into place.
True enough. Well, thank you very much for joining me then today, Brian. Maybe we'll talk again soon as we see this unwind, or talk about the relationship once we get a permanent prime minister and see where we go from there.
Well, thank you, and I'm going to have my guy put this show on writeforcanada.ca and writeedition.com, where I yip and yap all of the time about politically right is right, left is wrong. Cory, and I thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you online.
Excellent. Okay, we will talk again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.